Welcome. First of all, I'm glad you found the time to hold this webinar. And first of all, obviously, I'm a big fan of yours, big enough to invite you to teach us pricing and sales on 13th and 14th of July. We're glad you actually agreed to come over. So you're a guy who opened a creative agency in one of the biggest cities in the world. Let's say in one of the most competitive markets, which is Los Angeles, and you succeeded. So that must have been hard. So I'm quite curious how that went, and I'd like you to introduce yourself a little bit to our audience, because obviously you're a great guy and quite familiar in creative world, but not everyone around here might be familiar with yourself. So if you could just briefly introduce yourself to our audience, that would be awesome.
Sure. Thank you very much. My name is Chrisa Do, and I run and have started two companies. The first one is called Blind. We're a brand design consultancy. We have a long history in doing motion graphics. We make basically commercials and music videos for some of the biggest brands and bands in the world. Some of our clients include Ford, Xbox, Sony, Acura, the list goes on and on, Google, and also some really amazing bands, Justin Timberlake, Coldplay, to name a few. The company that I'm most excited about is the second company that I started, which is called The Future, which is essentially a content and education platform. We use open platforms like YouTube, Facebook, to share what we've learned in the business realm and in the design space to help creative people just like the ones that are tuning in today, to help them understand their value and communicate their value to others. And that's really it.
All right, that's fantastic to hear. So if you could tell us briefly about some milestones in your career, some points where or projects that were like particularly close to your heart or dear to your heart, that would be great.
Okay, so some creative projects that maybe some of your audience might have seen is the crazy music video for Gnarls Barkley. And that was like a really kind of watershed moment for us as a company, because prior to that, as far as I'm aware of, nobody had seen an animated Rorschach test before, because we searched for it and we couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
And it's one of these videos that is significant in pop culture, because this is before CeeLo Green was who he is, and he did a collaboration with Danger Mouse, and this formed this band called Gnarls Barkley. Crazy was the first digital song to hit #1 on iTunes. So it's pretty cool. It's got hundreds of millions of views all over the internet and spawned a bunch of parody videos.
All right, fantastic. Would you say that was sort of a turning point in your career, or?
No, it's not the turning point. It's just one of the many points. And I think this is something that's something that everybody here needs to know, that your life and your professional career is quite long. And I would not look at it like any one job is going to make or break you, because that puts too much pressure on you to succeed or fail on that one project. So it's a series, and it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. If you think about sprints, you'll be out of business in a couple of years. Think about it in the long run. Now, I started a company in 1995, so this is our 24th year in business. And we've done this because we keep our eye on the long game. And that's really what's really important. But I would say like one of the big breakthrough moments for us was when we started doing national TV commercials for a major automotive brand. So that was Mitsubishi Motors. So we prior to that, we started making commercials just for the dealer spots, talking about interest rates and price points using typography and animating on screen. But eventually they invited us to do the national campaign, which was really cool. And that was a real breakthrough moment.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. So hopefully we'll learn a few things from you today. Basically in July, you'll come over to teach us pricing and sales. And today I'd like to see if we can get a glimpse of what's going to go down in July, and have our participants gain the knowledge today that they can use actually, like maybe next day talking with their prospect customer, or maybe talking with or trying to sell the work to somebody who is not yet their prospect customer. So
yeah, so it's a pretty intense 2-day workshop, as you can imagine. So you need to be mentally prepared to put in the work. Most important to this is to have an open mind and to have a spirit that's going to be able to consume new information and change perhaps some of the ways that you've been thinking about not only yourself, but how you price and how you think about what's valuable. And I apologize in advance because there's construction work going on. That's why I'm in this plastic tent. You can hear vacuums and saws going from time to time. Now, it's going to be a combination of lecture, role playing, which you actually do with each other, and I watch and coach you, and we'll learn from one another. And I've prepared several pages of worksheets. I'll have examples of how we bid. I'm going to teach you the 3 ways in which you can bid, and you can be successful at doing any one of these things. Now, of course, the holy grail of them all is value-based pricing.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, that's out of reach, and that's totally okay. You could be very successful even pricing hourly or pricing based on project fees. And I'm going to teach you each one so that you can maximize the potential of what you're charging, to teach you how we do it in the West, as if you guys are working in your local market. But if you start working with foreign companies, the West, America, Canada, UK, you'll learn like what the bar is so that you don't underprice your work. More than anything, if you just learn how not to underprice your work, you're going to be quite successful, because you have what Gary Vaynerchuk refers to a lot as arbitrage on your side, meaning it costs you little to produce, but you can sell it for high. So buy low and sell high, and you'll do fine.
Right, fantastic. So this concept of selling value, this is quite interesting, and it's like a little bit of a mind shift, I would say, in terms of pricing your work per hourly basis. So if you could just expand on what do you mean by pricing and selling value, and how important is it to overall success?
I'm sorry, my kid is like screaming in the other room. It's like,
Should I repeat the
Give
question?
me 1 second. I'm going to knock on the wall here. I already warned him. So now I'm going to go kick his butt in a second. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, awesome, man. No problem. Yeah, so we have a small break while Chris sorts out his kid. You good now?
Who knows? Who knows? Let's see. I'm going to go there and kick their butt in 1 second. So if they persist, I've already told them it's an important call. Okay, sorry. Ask me the question one more time.
Yeah, man. So again, value-based pricing, let's say. So
yes.
What is value-based pricing as an opposite to per hour charging or charging product? And how important is it to actually price the value of your work rather than hourly rate?
Okay, so we need to understand something, and I'm going to go much deeper into this once we get into the workshop. But there are 3 words that everybody here who's in the process of bidding on a project needs to understand: cost, price, and value. And we switch these terms around quite a bit, and we need to understand what each one means so that we understand what it is that we're doing or what the client is asking of us in the moment. So let's talk about cost. Cost is basically the sum of the time and materials that are used to make something or a service, period. So it's time and materials. That's what cost is. So when you say, what is a cost? And you know this term from accounting, cost of goods sold. It's basically what it takes to make something.
Right.
Okay. Now, the next term that you need to be aware of is called price. Now, price can be determined by a number of things: market value, or what somebody's willing to pay you for a product or service. And that's usually determined between cost plus profit equals price. So obviously you can't sell something at cost, because you'll make no profit and you'll go out of business. So if you're making a t-shirt, you have raw materials, the t-shirt, the ink, the labor of printing it and drying it, and space and electricity and whatever. So that's what it costs you. And a lot of people in the creative space do not understand this very basic concept, because what they price to the client is what it costs them to make, thinking, since I'm working in my business, I'm profitable. But there's a simple test to take. If you hire somebody else to do the job that you're doing, what's the money that's left over? And when there's no money left over, your business is not profitable, and you're a couple of steps away from going bankrupt. Okay, so we need to understand that. Now, historically speaking, if you're bidding or estimating a project based on hourly fees, you're saying, this is my cost. It costs this much to hire me to do this thing. So the only way you can make more money is 2 things: change your hourly rate, which you can do, and I'm going to talk about that, or 2, work longer. That makes sense, right? So if you charge, say, $100 US for an hour, that's not too bad. And if you work 10,000 hours, that's a lot of money. If you work 1,000 hours, that's less, and 100 hours, that's less. So you're incentivized to work on something for longer. So really all you're selling to the client, if you charge based on hours, is time. You're saying, I'm going to sell you time. More units of time you use, the more it's going to cost you. Now, here's the thing. The client has uncertainty because you're just racking up more hours, and this could be problematic, right? Because they hired you to do a website, they hired you to build an app, but they have no idea what you're going to build. They just know how much time they're spent, how much money they're spending based on your time. On the opposite end of the spectrum is value, and value is basically the emotional benefit that somebody receives from buying something. So this is where the term price the client and not the job. So yes, it costs a certain amount. I'm going to add profit, but what is the emotional benefit that the client receives? So Warren Buffett said this: price is what you pay, value is what you get. Yeah. And if you think of it like that, then each person has a different set of values. So therefore, even though you build the same website for 10 different people, they're going to value it differently. Some people are sentimental. Some people are emotional. Some people need to get it done really fast. Some people, their business hinges on the success of the thing that you've done. So it's going to be worth a lot more to them. Big companies can afford more. Little companies can afford less, generally speaking. Not always true, though. So once we get into this, then we have to understand the buyer psychology and what they're thinking, what they want. And we have to understand how to have that conversation. Once you do that, you can actually charge in far excess of what you thought was previously the limit. I'm going to tell you a little story, okay?
Yeah.
A few years into starting our business, we had a windfall. Like, we had a very profitable year. So I told my wife, at this time, I think we're only a few years out of school. I'm doing about $2.2 million, but I just can't seem to get beyond $2.2 million. We hover around there. So we had a good year. I told my wife I'm going to hire some consultants. And that year I hired a financial planner, a certified public accountant, and a business coach all at the same time within a couple of weeks of each other. And this is one idea I want to share with everybody, that when you're in the abundance mindset, this is the time to take all your risk. Because when you're in the scarcity mindset, like when you're having trouble making payroll and employees are complaining and you're worrying about paying bills, you will not take any risk because you're in pure survival mode. So it's the opposite of what you think. When you have the money, that's the time to spend the money to learn something. Okay. So I hired a business coach, and here's the interesting thing. Within a matter of weeks, maybe a couple of months, he was able to help me transform myself and then therefore transform the company. The question I had for him was this. Sorry if I'm going on too much of a story, but I think it's important for you.
It's fine. Go on. Okay. It's interesting.
So here's the thing. I said, why can't we win projects more than $200,000? Why can't we do that? Like, that's our glass ceiling. Like, we can win them all day and night if they're under 200,000. Once the budget creeps into 300, 400, 600,000, we can't win. We're only winning 20% of those jobs, and it's demoralizing to the team. We're spending a lot of money and resources chasing after these jobs. It's really, really tough. He goes, okay, tell me how you go after work. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, of course. I've been doing this for years now, a couple of years at least, and I'm pretty good at this. So I'm going to tell him, and he's going to be amazed. Watch. So we tell him, we get on the call. This is what we say. This is what we do. And he kind of nodded, smiled, and then he leaned back. He's like, you're doing it all wrong. And I was shocked. I was like, no. What do you mean? How is it that I'm doing it all wrong? I win projects for, at $200,000. He goes, here, let me explain something to you. Now, you think you're playing in the major leagues, like the major league sports, right? The top tier, AAA, that's what you're playing in. But in fact, once you move beyond $200,000, once you get to $300,000, $400,000, they can literally hire anybody in the world that they want to hire. The competition got really steep. So you're competing with maybe local companies, although competitive and good, but now they can hire an Australian company, a UK company, and you're always going to be bidding against the best in the world. So you were actually in the minor leagues. You're in the feeder league. And you thought you were in All-Stars. Wow. Okay. So what am I doing wrong? He says, your whole approach to talking to the client is wrong. I said, okay, what's the problem? He said that you're essentially leaving a lot of unspoken things to chance. Like, why don't you ask them about the price? Why don't you ask them about the budget, how they make decisions? What is it they want? What inspired them? And basically just taught me how to ask questions. And this is why this is a very integral part to how I communicate and what it is that I teach. How do you ask questions and how do you communicate with people? So when he told me, it seemed like so obvious, like, why have I never asked a client what their budget is? because I was afraid. I thought it was rude. I thought I was being unprofessional by asking, what's your budget? Like, I'm supposed to know. I'm the expert. So I was thinking, wow, okay, I can do this. And he said, yeah. So as simple as that may sound, within 2 coaching meetings with him, a total of what, probably 3 or 4 hours, I slowly transformed and I started winning projects. So we went from 20% to 30% to 40% to 60 to 70%. So now we're closing projects all the time. And within that first year, we went from $2.2 million to $3.9 million. Not quite double, but oh my God. So now we're falling over buckets of money. And now I'm like, what do I do with myself? I'm only 20 something years old with millions of dollars. This is incredible. And that was a turning point in my business.
Right. Very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I have a set of questions actually bubbling in my head. First one is just the pricing thing. When you said when you charge per hour, you actually charge. You're saying to customer, listen, this is how much my time will cost, and I'll do my work for you within that time. But pricing for value is really a different beast, I would say, because
it is.
Yeah, so I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into that, because that really, and it really ties well to the fact that you have to ask questions, because to price value, you have to understand what is value for your customer, right?
Yes, yes.
So how do you approach that then?
Okay, now here's my one concern. It's like you're asking me to teach you calculus, and I'm not sure everybody here understands trigonometry or basic geometry. So we have some things that we need to probably talk about, but I'm going to answer your question. I want to caveat my answer first by letting you guys all know that do not feel pressured that you have to do value-based pricing tomorrow. And if you don't do it, you're a total loser. That's not it at all. Okay. This is the holy grail. And this requires some years of experience and mastery. I will teach you the mechanics of it, how you do it, but you can't simply just run out there and try it tomorrow. Okay. I just want to say this.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of money to be made just by understanding how to charge by hour, how to have the money conversation, how to talk about project fees. And you could make a ton of money doing projects fees. Now, mind you, when I was doing $3.9 million, I was just doing project fees. This has nothing to do with value-based, because this is years later that I start to learn this, okay?
Right.
Now, let's talk about the psychology here. So when somebody buys something from you, they're fundamentally looking for change. They're looking to change from one state to another state, okay? They're looking for higher conversion. So they're looking for a change in conversion rates from, like, say, 1.2% to 1.6%. Oh, now we're starting to understand that the change that they desire, the delta, the difference between where they're at now and where they want to be. You are the facilitator of helping them achieve that. So all you want to do is to capture some fair share of the value created. That's really at the bottom line. So here's the problem now, is if the change they seek is small, then value-based pricing is going to yield a very small result. So now you have to start to understand that the reason why I say this is I only want to solve big problems. Don't give me your easy problems, because somebody else can do that for a lot less money. And that's not something I'm interested in, because anybody can do that. Why bring in an atomic bomb to kill a flea? It doesn't make sense. You will not like it because you will pay me a lot of money to solve a very small problem. And if they insist, it's because they really like you and they respect you and they just want to work with you. Okay. And then I'm happy to take the money, but I warned them ahead of time. You can do this for a lot less without me. Okay. So now I'm looking for a big problem to solve. And everybody on this call listening to this, you need to look for big problems to solve. Problems that impact revenue, awareness, conversion, culture, something that's big. Not like we need you to help us pick the right shade of red. That's not going to really help. Okay, so the client has to see value in the thing that they're looking to solve, because you cannot create that for them.
Right.
So we know this. If you have a splinter in your finger, that's a small problem to solve. So tweezer pulls it out, you're done. If you have a splinter in your brain, oh my gosh, a bone spur, that's a big problem to solve. It looks similar, but it's not. Not everybody can do this problem, and for which there are really large fees attached to this, because it's a complex problem. The consequence of failing is catastrophic. The consequence of failing pulling a splinter out of your finger is whatever. You get a little infection. It's not a big deal, right? So this is why I look for big problems.
Right. So if I may ask you a follow-up question then. So where do you take the confidence that once you find a client with big problem, you are able to solve that problem for him?
Oh, okay. Well, usually we're designing the solution together. So it's not like I'm going to go away and say, well, I know better than you. I'm going to figure this problem out without you. Usually the conversation goes something like this. What's a big problem you're trying to solve? What is something that you've wanted to figure out but haven't been able to yet? Then they tell you. It's like, what's been the problem? Well, we don't have the right people. We don't have the right resources. We're not quite sure to, okay, so what do you think? And you just dive deeper and deeper and deeper till you help them realize the problem is this. And by doing so, you're kind of excavating, you're digging in and you're surfacing what the true problem is. And you're like, oh, I know how to solve that problem. Okay, so you're getting clarity on that. Now, before you tell them what the solution is, you're going to say, okay, I think I have a pretty good idea what this is going to be. Now, we need to talk about budget. Okay. And then you can go into it. You can start to ask them lots of questions and you can get into it. So at some point you need to say the price. You can say, well, problems like this typically would cost around $120,000. Is that something that you're comfortable with spending to solve this problem? You're going to have two possible responses. Yes, this seems very fair, or no, this is not fair at all. Okay. If they say, yes, it's very fair, it's because you've done a very good job of helping them to realize what the big problem is and why they need to solve this. They know too. They know what's riding on the line. They know that if they solve this problem, they can capture $1.2 million of new business on top of what they're doing. So what I'm asking for is just 10% of the value created. I could ask for 20%. I could ask for 40%. Whatever it is I feel is palatable for myself and for the client. So that's one way. They can agree, yes, that sounds very fair. What if they say no? What if they're like, that sounds outrageous? Okay. Your only reaction there should be, okay, I understand that's a lot of money. Maybe I misunderstood the problem that we're trying to solve. While we were talking, it sounded like it was a multi-million-dollar problem. Like, yes, it is. So what's the problem then? Do you want to spend a little bit amount of money to solve a big problem? Meaning you want to make a small effort for a big problem. And that's usually problematic. I want to just check the logic. Maybe I don't understand that. Maybe you think you are better off hiring somebody at half the cost of what I'll charge and you'll solve the problem. Maybe that's the way you should go. And if it should not work out, give me a call. But the consequence is now you have something that you've spent a lot of time working on that didn't solve anything, perhaps create some confusion with your customers. Perhaps people will start to wonder, like, why do we go down this path? So I can't convince somebody to make a good decision. All I can do is give them the information that they need to make the best decision for them and let them decide.
Right. So I would have two follow-up questions then. First of all, I'm curious whether you ever had the chance or had the situation where you actually talk with your customer or prospect client, whatever, and you actually dig deep into what the problem is and you actually came up with a solution on the spot, but never told them really, because obviously you have to set out the budget and sign the contract. So did that ever happen to you?
I'm sure it's happened prior to me understanding how to have the money conversation, for sure. I think we've all been so eager to give our clients solutions because we think that's going to win us the job. Sometimes they work with us, sometimes they don't. And that's the risk that you take. And I'm okay with taking the risk sometimes, but now that I know better, most of the time I just help them to understand what the problem is. Okay. And here's why I think it's valuable and why it's not risky for you to help them figure out the problem. Somebody who helps you figure out what you've been struggling with but haven't been able to articulate and have no clarity on becomes very valuable to the person. So if I tell you the reason why your employees are not respecting you and then you figure that out together, you're going to say, wow, Chris, you've done a really great job. How do I hire you now? How do I get the solution from you? Because you understand the problem so well. You actually understand it better than me. So I'm building rapport, establishing expertise. And now we're going to say, okay, I'd love to help you with your culture problem with your employees. And in order to do that, I'm going to need to charge you $40,000. Is that something that you want to spend? Is it even worth that to you? And they say yes or no. Again, we just go right back into it.
Right.
I haven't provided the solution. I'm just giving them clarity on what the potential problem is. And a much more complex problem, I'm not going to be able to do that in the first meeting. I'm going to be able to sort of generally find where we need to go. And then I will say, look, obviously this is a much more complex problem that what can be solved within an hour of talking. Here's what I propose. We enter into a phased engagement where I do discovery with you. For that, I'll charge you $20,000 to do. We'll figure out what the real problem is. We'll interview people. We'll do all these exercises, right? We'll figure out the problem. And once you agree that that's the problem that needs to be solved, what we'll do then is provide you an estimate to solve that. You can hire whoever you want after the fact. So now I'm getting paid for ideas. I'm reducing the risk of them signing on for a really big project without any clarity. So it's like, there are little steps that we make. Russell Brunson talks about this. He calls it the yes ladder, getting little bits of commitment each way, because the bigger the budget, the bigger the project and assignment, the more steps you have to take. It's easy to sell somebody a stick of gum. What is that, 10 cents? No problem. Well, what about a giant like industrial supply of gum? Now it's $10. Like, I don't know if I need that much gum. What if you wanted to sell them the gum manufacturing plant? Well, now you're not gonna be able to sell it just because you're like, hey, do you want to buy this? Yes or no? It doesn't work like that. It's getting little bits of agreement. You're doing micro conversions, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, does this sound like it's kind of like the right problem? Yes. Would you like to enter into phase engagement where we could do a deeper dive and do discovery? Yes. Then you go through that and they're loving the process and the clarity that they're getting. Then you're like, well, now we're going to provide you a proposal, a bid. And if you like that, then we can continue, and then on and on and on. And this is how I've been able to take $100,000 project and turn it over $1 million client.
All right, awesome.
The same way.
Chris, just one brief stop here. Guys, I know you have some questions. So Chris, if you don't mind, we're just going to collect the questions and ask you at the end of the webinar, just for the clarity. Is that good for you?
That's good for me. So you guys go ahead and submit your questions via the Q&A panel.
Yeah, yeah.
Bottom there and just type in your questions.
Yeah, feel free to type in a question and then we're going to go through them later on. But since you're on that subject, I'd like to follow up with a question really about how important is listening or advising. Not advising. How much more important is asking over advising?
Yes. So here's the thing, and this is human nature, I think, to want to demonstrate what we know. And the way we demonstrate what we know is we tell the other person, is this what the answer is? And we start to give advice. And the way that we learn information, right, is we take an idea that we don't know and we compare it to an idea that we do know. And we kind of put those two things together. So when somebody says something new to you, you're searching in your brain for something that you do know and trying to demonstrate, I understand you. Now I want to tell you that's the fool's process. Resist the urge to confirm all the time what you're hearing by attaching it to something else that you know. What you want to do is, instead of giving advice, what you want to do is stay in the diagnostic process for as long as you can. And you think about it, anything that's worth doing, and I like to use the doctor analogy here, or even a car mechanic. Whenever you bring in something where there's a mysterious problem, you don't want to go straight to fixing it. Doesn't make sense. Excuse me. You don't want to go straight into fixing it. You want to perform a series of diagnostics, tests, analytics, an audit, do whatever you can so you fully understand the problem. This is for big complex problems, right? Because we want to make sure whatever direction we head down, at least we're facing the right way. Because you can spend a lot of time and energy chasing down a path and realize, oh my gosh, we're almost done with the website. Turns out nobody even goes to the website.
Yeah.
Right? So the way that you do that is you ask some very carefully constructed questions. Now, if you think the color is supposed to be red, and the reason why they're losing business is because they've been using blue and the answer is red, instead of saying, this is the typical way that creatives talk, you know what, blue doesn't work, red is the way to go. Color psychologists have said red is the key trigger to purchases, and you go down that path. What's happening right now is the client is going to push back on you. Why? Let's understand the psychology here. Because people are driven to be consistent with themselves. Even though they know blue is wrong, they don't want to seem inconsistent with themselves. So they're going to dig in. They're like, no, red is not it. Blue's it. Even though in their mind, emotionally, they're like, I think red is the right color. They're not going to admit that. So what you're doing is you're digging yourself into a hole too. And you won't back down either. So it's going to wind up in a stalemate, or worse yet, the clients are going to feel very offended that you're suggesting something that they're not ready to hear. So the better way to do this is to say, how important is color into buying psychology? And they're like, oh, it's very important. So if blue hasn't worked for us, do you think other colors might work? Like, well, maybe. What color might we explore together?
Right.
Like, I don't know. You tell me. Well, let's do a series of tests. My hunch is potentially red is the right color, but let's do a comparison A/B test. Let's do a split test and see which ones convert better. Right? And based on that, we'll come to conclusions. So let's spend a modest amount of money and time and do a quick A/B test to confirm that this is indeed the case. Like, fantastic. I like the way you think.
Right. That's quite interesting. So, I would like to, although I have some questions popping up in my head, I'd like to go back to the initial, let's say, I would say promise, but initial idea that we had, where we mentioned that hopefully our participants will be able to go out and test some theories and try to get a little bit more value out of their work. And since we went through value-based pricing, which is like rather difficult for now, but if we could unpack a little bit, what criteria do we have to fulfill in order to be able to value price? Because we spoke about this before, and we know that self-confidence is something that is rather important. So could you like expand on that?
Okay. So I'm sorry. What's the question?
Yeah. So in order to make a shift into a value-based pricing, there is a set of, let's say, I wouldn't say principles, but mindset changes you have to make. Let's say, for example, you have to be self-confident to do so.
Yeah, and confidence comes from information.
So basically, asking questions is a key part here. Is that correct?
Yes. Asking questions, staying unbiased, staying in the diagnostic process for as long as possible, and learning how to ask the right question that leads the client to the self-discovery and resisting the urge to give advice. Understanding that each client values what is being done differently, even though you are exactly the same.
And making sure we're after rather bigger problems, not small problems. Is that correct?
Yes, and you should ask that. What's a big problem you're trying to solve? And that could be the beginning of your conversation. Right. What is it that you've always wanted to do but haven't been able to? Boom, you're going to get a much better thing. So here's the problem though, and I think because I've done this enough times, people tend to say this thing. Well, my clients don't ask me like what problems they want. They just tell me this is the problem. They come to me pre-diagnosed and they're going to prescribe a solution. Hey, Bob, we want to build a new website. I hear you can help me with that. And now you're kind of stuck because you're getting pinned into this thing where they tell you what they need. Or we need a new brand. Our old brand sucks. And we need to rebrand and make it fresh and cool and modern. So how do you respond to this? So it's like, what am I going to do now? Because I'm happy to get the work. I don't want to alienate the client. So here's the thing. There's a very simple phrase that you can use to help you redirect the energy of the conversation. First, you say, thank you very much for thinking about us. I'm delighted that we're even talking about doing this project with you. Before I dive too deep into saying how we're going to do this thing, let me just ask you a few key questions. Why do you need to do this? And then they tell you. Right? Then you start to understand. And then you may see a disconnect between the why and the solution. When you hear that, it's your obligation to say this in the least offensive way possible to the client. Like, when you said you need to do this and this was the solution, can you see like how this doesn't work? For example, if you said you needed to create a vegan breakfast plan, but then you're saying we've got sausage in the breakfast, something doesn't feel right. Do you feel right about that? And they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. We don't need sausages. Get rid of that. I'm like, yeah. Now I can talk to you about what the big problem is.
Right. Have you ever encountered a client that got a little bit annoyed or fed up by the stream of ongoing questions?
Of course. Because they're not used to people talking to them like that. They're used to being the alpha person, the CEO, the executive who barks orders at everybody, and they're all happy to take their order and give them the stuff. So when somebody comes in a non-confrontational way, challenges some of their habits and behavior, they have to make a decision. And this is good for you, okay? This is really good for you. They have to make a decision like, I like this person. I like that they're challenging me in a smart way, or I don't like them at all. Now, this is what people say, right? Guy Kawasaki talks about this. He says the key to Apple's success is A players hire A players. They don't hire B players. They hire above them.
Right.
The B players hire C players. C players hire D players, okay? So you're going to hire people that are dumber than you, that know less than you, and that's the kind of company you're going to have. And then you get to save yourself from somebody who wants to tell you what to do all the time and not even respect the work that you do. So I only want to work with people who want to hire the very best and value not only myself, but themselves in the terms of like what it is they're trying to do. If they value their time, they're going to value my time a little bit. If they don't value their time, guess what's going to happen? My time is worth very little.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I'm thinking, how is this? What is the situation really on the Polish market? Let's say with Polish customers or Polish clients, where most of the time, this is what I feel like. If you have different comments or different points of view, obviously let us know. But my experience is that it's really hard to find a client who actually respects your work, because most of the time they just like, yeah, this is what I want to pay, do this work for me, and very bossy. Obviously we are avoiding this type of clients, but it's really hard. It's like 1 in 10 maybe, where a client where he approaches you in a way that he treats you like an expert. So for myself, it's a little bit better now, but when I began, that was the case. Now I'm just like trying not to work with people who don't respect our work, because obviously they pay for our expertise and for our support. But I wonder whether this is actually, if you can make a shift from, or help a customer or client make a shift from hiring B players to hiring A players, and make him realize that he needs to be an A player. Does that make sense to you?
Can I help them to realize that?
Can we help them realize that? Yeah, for example.
You can help them, and you can say, look, I have a question for you. I see a certain pattern of behavior, and I'm just curious if you're aware of this and if this is something you want to pursue. I noticed that you have a tendency to hire people who want to do everything you do, or that you want. I won't call them B players, right? In America, they're called yes men or yes people. And is that working out really well for you right now? Do you like to do all the thinking by yourself? Are you the only one who worries about your business and everybody else just falls in line? Does anybody else bring ideas to you that can help your company grow? If you don't like that, we're probably a really bad fit for you.
So it's a matter of actually making sure your customer treats you like an expert and authority in your subject.
Well, you have to be an expert and authority in your subject,
well,
first and foremost, right? You have to have self-respect, and you have to be able to say, like, I don't need this job so desperately that I'm willing to take any kind of abuse. Here's the interesting thing. I want to say a couple of things here. Now, I've been a freelancer for a very short period of my life, but I got to see some very aggressive creative directors and bosses, but they never treated me like this. They would yell at one person after another and disrespect them and tear up their work. But when they came to me, they didn't do that. Why? Because I wasn't going to take that. The other people were cowering up to them like, oh, what do you think? And no matter what they said, they were like, oh, yeah, you're right. Where I'm like, I would do something like, and the creative director's like, I don't like that. I'm like, why? Like, I don't know. I'm like, well, how do I make it better if I don't understand why? So then the dynamic changes. They never speak to you that way again. Because what happens is within seconds, people unintentionally define how they're going to work together. This is like the rules of engagement, right? Like we know, especially in personal relationships, if you meet a beautiful person at a bar, you know that you're going to be in control or you're going to be the doormat. You know. Very rarely do you arrive and say, we're going to be equals.
Yeah.
Okay. You ever see like a really beautiful woman with like a really ugly guy and she just him all the time? Because he comes to that relationship accepting that he's not worthy of the affection, and he'll be treated like a dog. It goes both ways. Some women go to guys and like, oh, I'll just do everything you say. And it's like, then you get treated really poorly. So this is why I think really super successful people need to meet equally successful people who have the self-confidence. Otherwise, the relationship's going to be imbalanced.
Fantastic. So on 13th and 14th of July, will you teach a bit of that?
I will teach you anything that you guys want to know. I usually come with a very prepared talk, exercises, worksheets to teach you things. But the benefit of us doing 2 days together is there's a lot of room to be spontaneous, to respond to the very needs that you have and solve your problem. I'll give you the tools that you need. I've coached hundreds of people, thousands over the internet, and I've been able to help so many of them change their lives forever. And I get notes every single day how somebody's like, I used to charge $400, now I'm doing $40,000. I'm like, well, good, send me some of that money. I've been helping, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I help people like go from one person in particular who's in my workshop. His name is Peter, and Peter said that within 10 weeks of taking the workshop with me, he was able to charge 20 times as much. Now, this is not a typical result. I don't want to be like some snake oil salesman and tell you like, I'll take the workshop and it'll be 20, because then I'm not charging enough for sure if that's everybody's result.
Yeah.
But each and every one of us has a trigger. We are waiting to hear something, to see something, or to know something that then gives us permission to go about and conduct our lives the way that we're supposed to. So I don't know that all across the internet, but I know I was talking to someone yesterday and he confided in me. He's like, when you told me pick one thing, he's like, I knew I needed to pick one thing, but when you said it to me to my face, I'm like, you're right. I'm all over the place. I just need to pick one thing. And
awesome.
Sometimes that's all it takes for people.
So I have a question for the audience. We have questions here from you guys, and obviously we're going to go through them in a bit. But since Chris mentioned that he's going to teach us whatever we need, what do you guys think? Do we need Chris to teach us how to handle difficult clients that we probably all of us encountered in Poland? Let us know in the chat.
That's my specialty, by the way.
Just
gnarly clients. I will teach you the tools. And you'll see it's like you're in a fight and you've never learned how to grapple or to strike. And then all of a sudden you learn how to grapple and like, oh my God, it's kind of effortless. And I could just move through this space. I'm like, I didn't realize I had it's power. Yeah, it's all inside of you.
All right. Awesome. Fantastic. So do you want to add something on top of that, or should we just move to the questions? We have 6 questions open. So
yeah, I want to just finish off on this idea. And I hear this a lot, especially from people that are in markets where they feel like, oh, the local culture and economy sucks and I can't do this. And well, let's look at this, all right? Everybody on this call knows somebody who unfortunately looks down on their own culture and their own products. They'll only pay $2 for a box of crackers, let's say, that are Polish brand. But then there was this British brand or this Australian brand, and you'll pay 5 times as much. Why? Because we want what we can't have, something outside. So the mentality is this. It's not that they're not willing to pay. They're not willing to pay until they see the value. You understand that? I want everybody to understand that, because they will splurge on an Italian sports car or a really beautiful German necktie, or some Russian food product, or an American XYZ. They will pay.
Yeah.
So you have to learn how to elevate that. And the thing is, they're just saying to you right now, when somebody doesn't pay you a lot of money, it's not that they can't afford more. It's that they're just saying to you, I don't think you're worth that. Because I will spend money on things that I value. They'll take, and you know this, they'll take a first-class business flight, get picked up by a Range Rover, Uber, they'll spend money where they think it's important. The problem is if you, like in those abusive relationships, show up like hat in hand, like, oh, please, sir, how can I? Well, guess what? Why would I pay you more? Nobody in their right mind would. They would be foolish to pay you more because this is the way you behave. So you need to change yourself, and then the relationships that you have will change. Now, I'm going to give you this quote. I don't know if Errol Garrison said this first or not, but he loves to say this. When you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at will change. Let me say that one more time. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. So you feel it's impossible. You feel like the local market is going to continue to lowball you and not respect you. Well, if that's what you believe to be true, guess what? That's going to happen time and time again.
So it seems to me that a bootcamp we're going to hold in July is really somewhat of a, in terms of knowledge passed on, is somewhat of accumulation of your career and experience and all the investment you made in yourself and what you learned. And basically, you're just going to dump it on us in 2 days, and and we're going to learn as much as we can, because this really sounds awesome. So is it fair to say this experience can be transformative for our participants?
It can be if they have an open mind.
If they have an open mind.
Yeah.
So
because look, I broadcast our channel and our content to thousands of people all over the globe. And then certain people respond to me and say, look, I've been able to do X, Y, and Z. While the majority of the people are kind of still stuck. And what do? They say, this won't work. That can't happen. That's not true. They will never say yes. So they already have committed themselves to failure. So they won't try. Or when they try, they self-sabotage. Like, see, I told you it was not going to work. Whereas I met this kid in, where was it? In the South, in the United States. His name is Jacob, and we were doing a workshop together, and he started giving me really smart responses, right? I'm like, wait. How do you know all these terms like price anchoring and price bracketing? He goes, well, I watch this channel on YouTube. It's called The Future. And we laugh. I'm like, you're a young man. And then he told the group how much money he's charging as a 22-year-old kid. And I was just blown away. It's like, that's the difference. These people apply what they learn. They don't feel like they need to know everything, like how it works. They just try. And that's the critical part. So if I can say the magic is, you can come for 2 days. It's very easy. I can teach you everything I know in like 25 minutes. The rest of the time is spent on you getting out of your own way, breaking down your own mindset, why you don't believe something to be true. And I'll prove it to you. I have a series of exercises where I ask you certain questions, and they're not trick questions, but the answer is not obvious. And then you'll see how much you think you know, and then you'll realize, maybe I don't know anything.
I already did realize that, so I can only improve during the bootcamp.
Right? We'll have many, many hours together. Let's knock out the questions.
Yeah, let's hit it. So let's start from Peter Micher. I'm not sure how to read that. I'm sorry if I hadn't read that correctly. So Chris, what is your policy, if any, on kill fees? With your experience, would you say it's more value-based or hours poured into the project-based?
Okay, there's two potentially different questions here. And if Peter wants to reframe the question after I answer it. Now, normally I would ask Peter to come online and talk, but we're trying to knock out as many questions as possible. So first of all, the policy on kill fees is this. You should be asking for 50% upfront before you book your team. When the check comes, you start to assemble the team, okay? That 50% is non-refundable. They can change their mind tomorrow, and you're going to keep the 50%. Those are the kill fees. That's why you pay the 50%. Because what can you do? Once you book the team and you committed to paying them, and the client's like, we don't want to do this anymore. Like, well, what am I going to do with these 10 people that are sitting here? So people need to understand that, and you can communicate that up front. You can say, before you send me a check for 50%, you need to understand it's non-refundable no matter what happens, because I'm going to book my team. I'm going to buy the equipment. I'm going to, whatever it is, I'm going to hire all the right people. Okay. They're like, okay, we get it. I'm going to say no to another client. So I can't now unsay no. It's not going to work. Now, when they said, is price based on value or hours poured in, I'm going to tell you this. the cost to produce something has nothing to do with what somebody's willing to pay. So I need you to get rid of that idea that effort is a signal of value. It's not at all. And I have many stories and examples I will share with you in the boot camp or in the workshop together, and you'll start to realize, oh my God, I've had it wrong all this time.
Interesting, fantastic. So let's move to other question. There are still 7 open. So, oh my God. Katarzyna Kaczyńska, how to apply these principles to the Polish market? Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah,
we have quite specific clients. There is a low understanding of value. The graphic designer's environment is very spoiled. How to go more often to a client who will anticipate the high quality and values that we profess?
Okay. So here's the thing.
Yeah.
If you provide low quality, low value solutions, you will attract low value clients, period. So if you want them to change, you need to change. And it's not an answer anybody wants to hear, because they think, oh, if I learn 4 tricks, I'm going to get great high value clients and it's going to be amazing. They're going to love and respect me. So the bottom line is you have to transform. Now, let's just say, for example, Katarzyna, that you and I are bidding on a project. Without sounding too arrogant, who do you think is going to get more value out of the bid, you or me? And if we're bidding to the exact same client, the exact same scope, why is it that I think I can get more money from the client? Well, because I'm a different person than you. I've learned things, I've done things, and I can speak about experience. I can focus on the bigger problem. I'm going to remain unbiased and not needy of the project. That's the key difference, because you'll be willing to do it for whatever price, potentially. So that's the difference there. So whoever wants it more in a negotiation has less leverage. So you need to learn how to want it less, to not put yourself into a financial position where you're desperate to book the work so that you can pay your team. Okay, run really lean, keep everything really light. Don't spend excessively on anything, and build up your runway. It gives you a lot of leverage. That's what we have now. We don't take on any more clients. So when a client comes calling, we have all the control.
Right. So I think, Katarzyna, if you come over on 13th and 14th of July and go through the bootcamp, I'm sure we can actually maybe even talk together. How can this be applied on the Polish market? It's really a difficult problem, and I'm curious myself. But for now, this will be the answer. So thanks for asking a question. And we move to another one. Mr. Mikva, not sure how to read that as well. How can I value price my work if I have no idea how much is it worth and what is value for client? I have no idea how much it will earn in the future, maybe 0, maybe 1 million.
Okay. Well, that's what you have to take the workshop for.
Yeah, exactly.
The value conversation. And it has nothing to do with you. So that's the good news, because you're like, I have no idea what the value is. And that's right. You have no idea what the value is. So you have to ask the client, what value does this have to you? And there's a very specific framework that you can talk about. I'll tell you the high level stuff, right?
Yeah.
What you need to do is you need to understand their goals, how to measure success, what that value is to them, and then you can start to price it. It goes in that order.
All right. So hope you are satisfied for now. But as Chris mentioned, that is why you have to attend the workshop. So thanks for that question. And then we move to another one. Agnieszka Penconek. What are the factors deciding about the change of person mindset?
I don't understand that question. Can you help me?
So let's see. What are the factors deciding about the change of person mindset? So maybe what is required for a change of mindset? This is how I understand this.
For the individual who wishes to change?
Yeah.
Okay. I think you guys may have heard me say this on YouTube before, which is, I read this somewhere, and that seems to make a lot of sense. Most people change when their mind has been opened or when the heart's been broken.
Oh, yeah. That's a very good point.
Decision, are you ready to change? Have you opened your mind? Now, I'm going to give you a little story, right? So this is pop culture stuff here. There's a movie called The Karate Kid, and Daniel is seeking tutelage from Mr. Miyagi, who's the karate teacher. He bangs on his door because he's getting beat up all the time, right?
Yeah.
And Mr. Miyagi says, I will teach you karate under one condition. And Daniel's like, what? If you do everything I say without question. And it was like, oh, this is kind of an Asian dominant master kind of thing. And he hurriedly agrees, yes, I will do it. Because he's tired of getting his butt kicked. And so he goes, and the first thing Mr. Miyagi tells him to do is like to paint the fence. And he has very specific orders on how to paint the fence. So Daniel does it, and he's fine. And the next day he comes like, hey, I'm ready to learn karate. He's like, cool, let's wash the car, wax on, wax off. He's very specific too. So Daniel's getting totally fed up here, but at least he's willing to be obedient to his master to learn. And then he's finally fed up. He's like, man, I came here to learn karate from you. You've taught me nothing. All I've done is paint your fences and wash all your cars. And he says, Daniel, wax the fence. And he punches him, and he blocks his punch. So that's the thing. It's like you have to be ready and committed to change. Otherwise, nothing will happen. I could teach you for 10 years. If you're not ready to change, if you're not ready to try something different, you will be exactly where you are today.
Oh,
so that's
powerful.
an entirely personal question, okay?
Yeah.
Now, I assume if you make the commitment of time and resources, you're going to take that weekend, you're going to spend it with us, and you're going to pay money to be a part of this. It's the first step. One of my favorite business philosophers, Jim Rohn, when he speaks, whenever he speaks, he says, I want you all to give yourself a round of applause for being here. This is the first step.
Yeah.
You made the commitment. So congratulations that you're here.
So I will just follow this up with you guys probably know the price of attending Chris's workshop, but just remember we can it's 7,900 zloty in Poland. So but we can organize a refund for participants. So the final price should be about 1,500 zloty. So if you're interested, just let us know, and we'll see if we can work it out for you. And for your company, if you don't have the company, you can see what can happen there. So, so let's move to another one. Marcin Zaborek. We have quite a few questions, like 8 questions. So
they keep growing. So we're gonna have to cut this off at some point.
Yeah. So
why don't we do this? We'll do Marcin's question, and then you read through the rest and see if there's any one that really needs to be answered. Otherwise, don't do them in order.
Right.
Okay?
Sure. So.
Okay,
Marcin Zaborek, how to prevent a client negotiations during every realized project? How to stop reducing the price from client which wants to save money on every element of graphic design project?
Okay. Now, the problem here is there's a negotiation that's happening between you and the client. And generally speaking, when the client starts to drive the price down, it's because we haven't had a great conversation around money and value just yet. So there's no context for them to understand, right? So if I ask you this, who's willing to spend $10,000? And everyone's like, well, why would I spend $10,000? It's a lot of money. I know. But if I said, who's willing to spend $10,000 so that they can earn $100,000? Oh, well, that doesn't seem like a lot of money now. Who's willing to make that investment? And for every $10,000 I receive, you'll get $90,000 back on top of the $10,000 you invested. Well, people will be lining up out the door. So when you're having this conversation about money and the client's just pushing you down, it's because you haven't established the value. So I'm going to teach you how to, what we refer to as objections. When the client's like, you're too expensive, how should you respond to that? I'm going to teach you how to do that.
Fantastic. So, Marcin, I hope you're satisfied with that. And we're going to move to, I see like maybe 2-3 questions I would love you to answer. So first one is from Damian Krajka. Which client and how to recognize is not worth to make business with? So we already spoke about it, but if you could just sum it up briefly, that would be awesome.
Okay. The client that you don't want to work with does not value their time, does not have a big problem to solve, and therefore is giving you a small, inexpensive problem to solve. You just walk away from that. If you can't intelligently have a conversation with them and they come to the conclusion that they're better served by doing something different, you just need to walk away. So when you see a low value client come to you, the best thing I can do to teach you is to recognize them and to refer them to Fiverr or some other site. They're going to get less and excellent work, and that's what they get. You get what you pay for, no problem.
All right, Chris, I'm sorry to oblige you to do this, but I have 3 questions I have to ask. Sorry, mate, but
okay, go ahead.
Chris, this is Karolina Olechna. Chris, and how about with clients who want the best quality for low price, which is always the case here? How I should explain that they must pay more for full
okay.
service? Sorry.
All right, this is fantastic. So Carolina, when they ask you this question, like, I want the very best and I only want to pay $2 for it, you could just ask them, well, how do you propose we do that? Can you give me an example in your life where you want the very best and you could just pay the least? Show me one example where that exists. Well, Ferrari costs this, Lamborghini costs this, Cristal champagne or whatever costs this. Why is it that you think you can get high quality stuff for very little money? You want to invent a machine to produce something that has never been done before. This doesn't make sense. So I think what you really want is low quality work for low price. For that, there are many options. I'm going to recommend them to you right now. Well, let's not waste each other's time.
Fantastic. So next one is Luka Marcic. Yeah, I have ongoing cooperation with a large client. They often don't know how to define the brief. Scope is changing frequently, but they want a fixed proposal from us. How would you approach the situation?
Again, you can ask them, how would you be able to do this? So there's 2 ways that you can do this, Luca. You can say to them, since we don't know what the scope is and we don't want to do discovery and properly scope the project, I'm going to have to guess the worst case scenario. So normally I would charge you $25,000 to do this, but I don't know. I'm going to charge you $85,000 because you're asking me to take all the risk. And like Peter Drucker said, all profit comes from risk. If I'm taking the risk, I'm going to charge you for it because I don't know what I'm getting into. Doesn't it make more sense for us to spend a little bit of time and properly scope the project so we have an accurate idea of what it is so that you don't have to pay more than you need to? It's your choice.
Yeah, awesome. And then Katarzyna Kaczyńska, there's a second question, but it's something I went through as well. So I'm curious if you have an answer for this. So second, are the agencies and studios in the USA open to cooperation with freelancers from Central Europe? How to start such cooperation? So
yes, 100%. I think I'm speaking for myself now, and I don't think I'm an anomaly. I'm not atypical in that we look for talent from all over the world. And we usually find these people on Behance or Instagram, and then we start to inquire about how to work together. It doesn't matter to us where you're from. It doesn't matter if you're from India, Eastern Europe, or from China. It doesn't matter. Good work is good work, and we want to work with the best people. Now, within that, there's a price point which we can afford. Historically speaking, whatever price point that you get paid in a local market will be slightly under global market. So we can usually afford that. If you want to get work as a freelancer, it's actually not as hard as you think. You need to produce really beautiful pages on Behance and on Instagram so that your posts look amazing. If you build your audience that way, there's a good chance somebody will find you. They can only hire people who they know. So if you're really hidden because you're afraid to show your work or you haven't put in the time and energy to make your work look good, well, guess what? Nobody's going to call you because they have 1,000 replacements for you.
Right, fantastic. Absolutely agree. You have to show yourself up and make sure you know the tools as well, so that if you use Instagram, for example, you know how to tag your pictures and make sure that people can find them. So that's awesome, great. And yes. I would have actually one last question from Agnieszka Pence. This is again a second question, but still, I think it's worth asking since this is the situation for many freelancers and many people in Poland, many professionals. So how to spot the I'm ready or I have enough knowledge and experience for my own business moment. I don't want to make a mistake of creating a business when I'm not ready. Am I ever going to be ready? Is it just the critical voice?
Okay. This is fantastic. So how do you expect to gain experience without gaining experience? This seems like a strange phenomenon. Everybody starts as an amateur. Everybody, as a student, as a learner, as an apprentice. So you will never be ready until you start. Once you start, trust in your training, your process, your intelligence, your ingenuity, and your hard work to solve the problem. And all you can do is do the best that you can. somebody asked me this question yesterday, like, when you did this project, did you know you're going to be able to do it? I said, no. And that's true about every project that we do, because we like to do new things. So we present to our client an idea that we don't yet know how to make, but we bid it high enough that we can hire good people to work with. And then through their expertise and through our direction, we'll get there together. It can be stressful, but that's where the profit comes from, okay? Just accept that doing new things, learning, and being innovative is messy. You can't do it in an unmessy way. Accept that. That's it.
So I'm not here to advise at all, but I think it's a problem for all of us, actually, just to make that step forward and take the risk, and try. Because you might never be ready. Like, you're never going to be ready for a child, probably. So,
You'll never be ready.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's what courage is for.
True that. So, Chris, thanks for asking all the questions and spending some extra time with us. So if you have some final words in terms of webinar and maybe a bootcamp you're going to conduct on 13th and 14th of July in Szczecin, please.
Okay. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody that's interested in growing their business to overcome some mindset issues and to get the tools that they need to learn how to bid projects properly, how to address client objections, and do it in a way that's low friction so that you can earn the money that you're supposed to earn, so you can capture the true value of your creativity. That's what I'm here for, and I'm looking forward to seeing you. We're going to get really deep because it's a 2-day workshop, July 13th and 14th. I look forward to seeing you. I'm also looking forward to going back to Poland.
Hope we get to invite you again. So guys, Chrisa Do, 13, 14 July. Thanks very much for your time. And again, have a look-see at our website. It's out there in the chat box. If you have some issues, let us know. We'll see if we can help out. Just remember, we can try at least and organize you a refund for this. It's not possible in every place, but just give us a call and see if we can sort something out. So again, Chris, thank you very much for your time, and guys, thank you for your time for attending this. And I'll see you on 13th and 14th in Szczecin.
See you, Chris. Bye-bye.